Hi, my name is April Aguilar. Make sure you subscribe to DNC Digital.
What's going on, everybody? It's your boy D from DNC Digital back with another episode of DNC Radio. My guest today is April Aguilar. Miss April Aguilar is the hostess of Vipers 360 on the RGV Vipers YouTube page. And also November 5th, this Friday, is going to be the home opener for the RGV Vipers. And I'm very excited because I love that team. And it's always a good environment when you go and you cover those games. So Miss April, how you doing today? Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm doing great. Super busy, but busy. Well, my dad always says, are you busy or are you productive?
Nice.
So I'm going to go with productive. It's been a very productive Tuesday.
So speaking of all that, because everything's going on and everything's getting started, it's kind of like a lot of hurry up and wait. But during the whole break, what would the organization do to keep itself busy? Because we weren't allowed to have games and everything.
Right. And it's so funny that you mentioned that because I was very fortunate to be one of the lucky ones. I continue to be employed by the Vipers organization because despite us not having games in person, we still participated in the bubble in Florida. So we constantly had to come up with innovative ways to be able to put out content for people, which is where kind of our main focus was drawn towards our YouTube channel, Vipers 360, kind of giving people an inside scoop of what life inside the bubble was like, especially because we couldn't go. The only ones who really got to go were obviously the players, the coaching staff, and one member of our organization, which is our media relations person, to make sure that players were, attending scheduled interviews with ESPN and so forth, and making sure that that coach was good to go. But definitely a time that forced us to be super extra creative. Zoom became our best friend, literally. Everything that we would do was on Zoom. And to be quite honest with you, I think it also almost allowed players to be a little more honest, forthcoming, comfortable. And I think it's because we weren't physically there in person.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know what I mean?
So not a lot of lights were on them. The cameras weren't pointed at them. Okay.
Exactly. There weren't like 5 people in the room. It was just them, myself, and a laptop, and just having conversation. I do feel like we had a lot of really deep and raw conversations with our players. A lot of them actually circled around mental health during that time, how kind of that affected them. Primarily, again, even though they were in Disneyland, they were in a bubble. Like they could literally not leave. They were not allowed to leave certain areas. They constantly had to be tested. So yeah, it was kind of cool to kind of hear that dialogue and so forth. But we definitely kept busy. It definitely forced us to be creative. And we were actually very lucky and blessed that because of our efforts, we were awarded the digital MVPs of the NBA G League because of all of the content that we were constantly
Round of applause, everybody. April, you're a part of that.
That's channel awesome. On our social media. So it was very, very good team effort. Shout out to Ernie, Julie, Ronnie helping us inside the bubble. It was a huge team effort from the marketing perspective, and we killed it.
I do want to shout out Julie, Ronnie, the whole crowd. It's always awesome to see everybody, and I wish everybody the best. Not only is there a team on the court, but there's a team backstage, as you just alluded to. How important is gelling together in getting this organization to move forward?
Oh, it's not just one person, it's multiple people, and I'm not even mentioning everybody. Right. And I when I say everybody, I literally mean everybody, from our custodian workers, from our parking attendants, from everybody plays a role in making sure that we're constantly functioning correctly. It couldn't be handled with just one person. And obviously people who attend our games don't see that. They just see the players and they see us winning and they see, the glitz and glam of it. But I mean, it's definitely a team effort. And it takes somebody who really loves sports, not just somebody who just enjoys watching it, but really loves the essence of it, to be able to keep an organization like this running. Most definitely.
You kind of touched on the fact that a lot of players were very open about mental health, and not recently, but I want to say the last 10 years, mental health has become such an open conversation that is no longer taboo. It's no longer like strange to say, or to allow
Correct.
yourself to be vulnerable.
Correct.
What have you seen from the outside looking in, because that's such a different perspective? What have you seen players, how have they adapted to the pandemic, to getting their livelihood possibly taken away from them, and now we're in a bubble where I have to isolate myself? What did you see out of the players during all that time?
I mean, it was definitely a struggle for them. With a lot of the conversations I was having, it was a struggle for them, primarily because basketball to them is their livelihood. That's how they support their families. That is their main stream of income. It's not something that they just do for fun. That's what they live off of. So it was something that they had to adjust with quickly. Unfortunately, that did come with scary results at time. During that time, watching the TV wasn't exactly everybody's favorite thing to do.
Right.
Actually quite traumatizing. And a lot of them would also mention to me, the constant testing that they would have to be doing. Even them, anytime they even had conversations with one another, they had to be wearing masks. They weren't allowed to order food from outside of the premises. So if you ordered something from Uber Eats, well, good luck. You just wasted your money, because now you're coming into contact with somebody that was outside of the bubble. So it was extremely, extremely strict, very protective. The NBA did a wonderful job of keeping their players safe. But at the same time, it was definitely challenging for them. And I think that's why the conversation of mental health was so important during that time, because just as it affected players, it affected all of us. And I think that's why our channel during that time resonated with a lot of people, because you had people like you and me at home,
Right.
that we're not professional athletes. But sometimes I would ask myself, like, man, like, is Kevin Love having to do this? Is Kevin Durant having to do? And it's the question, the answer to that was yes, they are
And probably
having
magnified times 10.
magnified, exactly, because of who they are and how many people they encounter with. And just having these conversations, especially one interview that I had with Anthony Lamb, he was very open and honest about that, about what that experience was like, and kind of like walked me through the day-to-day basis, how many times they had to get tested and so forth. But it was an adjustment. And just today, having conversations with them during media day, it's an adjustment even now.
Yeah.
Why? Because now it's like there's people around you. You've been forced, to avoid people because God forbid they have COVID. And now it's all of a sudden like, oh wow, there's a bunch of people. Obviously
It's almost like you watch old movies and you see a huge crowd, or like an airport scene, and you're like, oh my God, how are they like so close?
Yes, exactly. Now we're like all paranoid, but we continue to keep all the safety protocols in place. All of us are fully vaccinated, constantly wear our masks around our players. Player safety continue to be number one priority for us within the organization, for the NBA G League and for the NBA as a whole. But an adjustment either way during the pandemic and even now after, or towards the end of it, I should say.
Mention the creativity that you guys had to use during the pandemic to make sure you guys kept pumping out content. What was your biggest takeaway in noticing the adaptability and thinking on your feet? What from that lesson pretty much would you take away and use in your real life?
That there's no time to stop. There's no time to dwell. Dwelling is not going to get you anywhere, especially in the world of sports and entertainment, because it was evident to us during the pandemic that the show must go on, even if it's in a bubble, even if it's not necessarily happening in your hometown, wherever that the team is originally located, is that you had to think quick on your feet. It forced us and it challenged us to say, okay, we don't have access to our media room, our audio room, certain equipment. So how are we going to make up for that? What are people going to be looking for? It was a lot of studying, looking at trends, looking at what other teams were doing, studying analytics, what did people like, what was gaining the most attention. And we noticed that it was like those open and raw conversations. It wasn't
Right.
really even talking about basketball. It was talking about, hey, how are you doing? How are you dealing with this? What does your day look like?
All the
My day
layers were coming off.
correct. Like my day looks like this. What does it look like for you? Like, I'm scared. Are you scared? You know what I mean? Just having those conversations.
So, the pandemic and COVID weren't the only things that were like top headline in the news, um, due to a bunch of, unfortunate events, Black Lives Matter came out and was in full force to protest police brutality and everything. And so, that along with a lot of other events, basketball players, among other sports figures, have decided to use their platform to speak about things, to do a protest. I remember, was it Donald Sterling, the owner of the Clippers? They wore their jerseys inside out and they left their stuff in the middle of the court. Now, there were a lot of people who felt like they should, quote unquote, shut up and dribble.
Correct.
But then again, if you have a platform, a lot of people looking up to you. I agreed with the fact that, obviously everybody's entitled to their opinion. Now, you're in the business, you're in the industry. Is there a place for social commentary in organized public sports?
I definitely have to say that yes, there most definitely is. And we would be doing wrong if we didn't utilize our platforms. I mean, I can't personally say that I have a huge platform just yet. But I believe that activism needs to be spoken about every opportunity given. So that's why I really admired players. For example, even Kyrie Irving, when he was in the bubble, half of the time when they would ask him a basketball question, he would answer with some form of activism or some
Mhm.
form of, I guess, wanting to bring the topic onto something else. And for those people who are against that, it's like you said, I'm a true believer in freedom of speech, but I think sports is the perfect opportunity to do that. I mean, these players have millions of people watching them.
Yeah.
They have these huge platforms, these huge voices. So I'm definitely for that 100%.
You mentioned Kyrie Irving, and he's decided to. There's a lot of controversy with him because he's
Correct.
decided to not take the vaccination in order to play at home games, and it's a whole confusing thing going on over there.
Correct.
Now, he's been vilified in some forms of sports media and some just regular media, and not only that, but it's kind of like his personal choice that's
Mhm.
being put out in the front page, so to speak. Now,
Right.
with other players, a DUI, a domestic issue, or whatever the case may be, something personal about them
Mhm.
is brought out. Now, as a journalist in sports, how do you maintain sensitivity to the human being while still having your responsibility to report news on that person?
I think that all it varies from journalist to journalist. If I was in a room with Kyrie Irving, um, I wouldn't necessarily be asking him the questions that everybody's already been asking him.
Because you're going to
Why?
get the same
Because
answer.
exactly.
Yeah.
If 50 people or more than 50 people have already asked him the same question and you're getting the same response, what makes you think your question is going to be answered?
Got
you
it.
know.
Yeah.
I just totally approach the conversation differently. I believe there's certain ways to ask questions. I truly believe that he has his own motives and his own reasons as to why he does not want to take the vaccine. And it's not my place to do so, because at the end of the day, I'm not an NBA player and I chose to get the vaccine. So his decisions don't technically affect me. But I do feel like there's certain ways that the story can still be told, the questions can still be answered, so long as they're approached in a different manner. But unfortunately, not all media or journalists feel that way, because
No, they need some blood coming out to make sure they get
correct.
the
And
ratings.
sometimes, depending on who perhaps they report to or who they work for, that sometimes those are the answers they want, because him going off is what's trending on social media.
That's gonna blow up on YouTube.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
so for that particular journalist, that might be his end game. That might be something that he wants to do. But for me, I've always approached journalism and the sport of basketball like one, like this is my happy place. Like, I would want to be one of those journalists that players would want to sit down and talk to me, want to say, hey, I want to talk to her because she's going to give me the opportunity to actually tell her my story on why I made this particular decision, rather than make me feel like my decision is wrong and hers is right and I should be doing X, Y, and Z. But again, that's just a personal choice. I believe every journalist has different motives and so forth. But clearly that's not an approach that I would personally take.
So you're doing your thing in the sports journalism world, and for anybody listening that would like to be in sports media, in your experience and in your expertise, what would you say is something that people concentrate too much on, and what's one thing they don't concentrate on enough when they're trying to enter the world of journalism?
Well, that's a good question.
Thank you.
I would probably have to say, so coming from experience, I think I was always caught up on wanting the degree, the piece of paper,
Got it. Okay.
kind of legitimize myself, which I do believe helped me, obviously, because in journalism you have to write, you have to speak, which obviously helps in the process. However, I think once being here, I realized that it's really more so all about the relationships. It's the relationships, it's who it's how quick you can get your information, get in a respectable manner. It's who's willing to give you that information,
Right.
or who's willing to point you in the direction of somebody who can help you in that aspect. Because what they don't teach you in journalism school is that it's a very competitive world, and I want to be everybody's friend, but not everybody wants to be my friend, so that's the challenging part. And I think now I'm having to kind of rely on, okay, wait a minute, it's not just about the piece of paper. Like, yes, I went to school, but now I got to do dirty work. Now I got to go and hustle. Now I got to go and shake hands. Now I got to go in and meet the people that I've always, admired and so forth, and force myself to meet them. I was always kind of waiting, like, oh, okay, one day I'm going to meet somebody who's going to put me in contact with this person. And guess what happened? I met that person and they told me, no, you need to figure it out. If you want to meet them, you figure it out.
You got to put those heels on the hardwood. So
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time. And I'm not going to lie, like, that was a low key, like a rude awakening for me. I was not expecting that. I was expecting the, they're willing to help me. I'm willing to help people, but it's not like that. But now that I've had time to experience that, I appreciate that so much more, because it's forced me to kind of get out of that mentality, get out of that comfort zone,
and get creative.
Yes, and really get creative. Like, okay, I have nobody to rely on but myself. So how am I going to get this interview? Who am I going to contact? Who do I need to email? Who do I need to message? So yeah, it's quite the challenge.
You know, earlier I was thinking to myself, I was like, I should ask her what gravitated her toward sports. But then I thought to myself, I was like, that almost sounds sexist because it's almost like saying, why would a girl like sports? And we've had this conversation before when we were just getting cool and we were down in the court side and getting ready for the game. And
Mhm.
women in sports, and I feel weird saying it because it's like 2021, but
Mhm.
women in sports is like just getting the spotlight, even though the WNBA has been around for like 20 years.
Right.
There was the US soccer team, and then there's like the Resident Evil girl and a bunch of movies coming out with female badasses and
Mhm.
Hillary Clinton running for president. In your opinion, why do you think it took so long for women to finally be on an equal level on TV or in media or now in sports, you know?
I don't necessarily think that it took too long because I've always felt like there's been very prominent women in media.
Sure.
I think only now it's being um, highlighted or kind of spotlighted because there's more of us. But before, I always admired Barbara Walters. Like Barbara Walters to me from 2020 is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
wonderful journalist.
I remember
Oprah Winfrey.
Hannah Storm from NBA Inside Edition or NBA
Hannah
Inside. Sorry.
Storm, wonderful, wonderful journalist. Oprah Winfrey, wonderful journalist. So there's been these women kind of already laying out these steps for us. I think it's just now that there's more of us. That's really what it comes down to. There's more of us. We're not staying quiet. We're definitely proving to the man that anything you can do, we can definitely do better. And I think before there was also this misconception that women had alter egos of wanting or alter alternatives to wanting
Mhm.
to be in sports. Like, oh, she wants to be in sports because maybe she wants to date somebody from the team. And it's like, wait a minute, why can't I just want to be in sports because I like the sport?
Right.
And because I know of the sport, why does there need to be an ulterior motive? And I think now that women are kind of showing um, men that, you know what, like I belong here and I know what it is that I'm talking about. I think that's what's really been helping us kind of make a statement and make our mark in a sense. I mean, there's so many women in the NBA now. It's incredible. You have Malika Andrews, you have Ross Gold, you have awesome color commentators like Doris Burke. To me is like,
She's so dope. Like she's so,
okay, like
I'd
nobody
buy
is
her a
in
beer.
Doris Burke's lane.
Mm-mm.
Doris Burke is by herself. No man, no other woman is in Doris Burke's lane but herself. Like the way she talks about basketball to me is like, I even get goosebumps. Like the way she talks about basketball, I'm like, oh my God. Like she sees it before the play even develops. And
It's like I watch her speak and I kind of sit up. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Like, you
yes,
know,
yes. I think if I were to ever meet Doris Burke in real life, I'd probably fall to my knees and cry. Like I'm not even kidding. She just has like this presence about her. And I think it's so important and I'm so grateful. That's one thing that I'm very grateful for is that I'm able to say, you know what, those are the women that I look up to. Because before that, it was very rare,
mhm.
very rare to see those.
The list was short.
Yes, very,
Yeah.
very short. Yeah, very short. But now there's a Maria Taylor, there's Rachel Nichols. You constantly have, these women going out there and just doing their thing and they're going off. So I love it.
There's always room for improvement. So if there was any
Of course.
issue in that subject, women in sports, that needs to be worked on, what would you say it would be?
There needs to be more Latina women covering
Mm,
the NBA.
yes.
They're in the NBA, and I've had this conversation before already with my agent, and I told him I want to be covering the NBA as a Latina woman. I don't care that I'm not white. I don't care that I'm not black. I'm Latina. I'm fully aware of that. And no, I don't want to cover soccer. I want to do basketball. And it's that
I feel
simple.
like they're afraid you'll never throw it back to them. You'll just keep talking. Take over.
Probably. And you know what? I don't care. Like that's something, it's like all consuming for me. Like, and what other Latina have you seen covering the sidelines at an NBA game? Tell me, name one.
No, and I'll answer that question with another. How important is representation in sports? When you got a kid, maybe even, maybe from a broken home. I don't know. Maybe dad's not around. Maybe mom doesn't love him or her. How important is representation in sports?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. I mean, I can't even, I'd be talking here for 6 hours if I actually really got deeply into it, but it's huge. And that goes for representation in anything, whether that's in sports, whether that's in clubs, whether that's in, particular social activities. That's representation in everything, in people's jobs. But particularly in the NBA, I have noticed that when it comes to national televised games, the majority of the time, the broadcast team always consists of either an African-American sideline reporter or a Caucasian sideline reporter. I've never seen to this day. You do have Toni Collins, who I admire and I can proudly say is a mentor of mine. And she is a host for Sports Center. She's also Latina. I have had the opportunity to talk to her, and it was very hard for her. It was a journey for her as well. She actually worked down here in the Valley. I had no idea.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had no idea. I want to say it was Channel 4, but I could be wrong. She worked for one of the stations down here before, I think this was like before the Vipers were even here.
Okay.
So it's been a while, but she reported down here, and eventually she had to pay her dues, as does any person have to do when you're in this line of business. But now she's on Sports Center doing her thing. But yeah, I want to be the first. I think that would be so cool. There's Latina women covering baseball. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know. But yeah, Latina women in basketball, Latina women in hockey, that would be cool. In hockey.
That'd be cool. That'd be dope.
Yeah, in hockey. Where else? Golf, maybe. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of women who, aside from basketball, would like to cover other sports. But definitely there needs to be diversity there.
When during this conversation, you kind of think like, yeah, it was hard. It's hard for women to come up. It's hard for women to finally get that credit deserved, especially in a male dominated like sport or industry, like journalism or basketball. And it's almost like they're probably tougher than their male counterparts, because their male counterparts, with all due respect, because there's a ton of talented men out there in the sports journalism world, but damn, that girl probably went through a bunch of shit that you didn't go through just to grab the microphone and be able to look like, as an equal. So I remember I grew up in Jersey, and I remember after 9/11, the first Yankee game, and George Bush threw out the first pitch, and it was such a big moment because it was just such unity. And there's a thing that when you throw out the first pitch, you're in front of the mound, but he kind of looked around and he felt it, and he got on top of the mound and he threw a perfect like strike down the middle. And the Patriots won the Super Bowl that year. After Katrina, the Saints won the Super Bowl. And after the Boston bomb, and the Sox won the World Series. And I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about all that.
Yeah, I remember that.
And those teams aren't teams that I would ever cheer for on any day of the week, especially the Sox or the Pats, being from New Jersey. But those cities really needed those championships. Now, I've had a conversation with somebody that sports is like, it's not essential to life, right? It's like the most important, unimportant thing in life. Correct. So what is there to say about how healing sports can be to somebody?
Oh, 1000%. And I truly believe that's also the reason why I decided to make sports my livelihood, because it gave me the opportunity to really get to do what it is that I wanted to do in an atmosphere that was always positive, that was always high energy, that always came with the feeling of unity, the feeling of family, the feeling of of, you know, being one. There's never a time that I go to the arena during a game and I don't feel good, you know, or even if on my way, I'm maybe my day's kind of off. As soon as I get there and I see people with their jerseys, families having good time, kids asking their dad, can I get a popcorn? Can I do this? It just like, it all goes away because whether, again, I'm not a huge, personally, I'm not a huge baseball fan, but ask me what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to watch the championship game.
Yeah.
Will I know what's going on the entire 9 innings? Probably not. But why am I going to watch it? Because it's that feel good.
Those moments too.
Yes, those moments, the winning the championship afterwards, like the celebration. I think it's there's a reason for it. And I think the reason why it's so essential, it's because of that unity. And I think the NBA was fully aware of that. That's why they continue to do what they did with having the entire bubble, with everything that was going on. Like, I think without, I can't really even imagine not having an NBA season or an NBA G League season without a bubble. I think that would have been worse, to be quite honest with you. Because again, what other excuse to turn on your TV than to watch a game, you know, especially during that time. It was bad. It was so bad.
You know, now that you're talking about it, it makes me think of the Cubs winning the World Series. And usually after a championship is won, maybe a car gets set on fire, depending on the city. And I remember talking to somebody and they're like, oh, I hope those Chicago idiots don't like ruin their city. And I'm like, no, this is different. They've waited so long. Grandfathers are going to be holding their grandsons crying. Like I've waited, like I'm trying not to get emotional because that's probably one of the coolest moments about what happened with all that, because you just see people crying in the stands, like hugging each other. And like, I can imagine 3 generations of like, damn, grandpa used to talk to my dad about the games and they never won. And now I'm here and I'm sitting here with grandpa and now they fucking win. Like, it's so cool. Now, so you, April, you are on your way. I really hope that you are that fiery Latina reporter on the sideline, not giving anybody the mic but yourself, and probably yelling at all the players. But when you look back at all your experiences and your career thus far, what have been some of the watershed moments that kind of signified for you, like, I'm on the right path, I'm doing a good job?
I would probably have to say probably just inner conversations that I've had with myself. It's not even necessarily hearing it from anybody else. Because I do personally feel like I'm my hardest critic. Sure. I've had times when I share interviews with people and they're like, oh my God, that was wonderful. But you're like,
no,
but internally,
exactly what you mean.
Internally, you know, and I know you can relate to me on this, like, this is our craft. So we're constantly trying to perfect that craft. And there are times when I have interviews and I look back and I'm like, oh, I could have asked that in a different way, you know? But after we received that award from the NBA G League, I remember Julie telling me we won. And I was like, what? What did we win? She's like, we won the award. And I sat down and it just took me some time to process. I didn't there. I was still processing. But I remember I got into my car and I started to cry because I was like, it just felt like somebody's paying attention. Somebody took the time to see what it is that we did. And in the midst of all the chaos, we were still scared ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, I live here by myself with nobody but my dog. So to know that amidst that fear, we were able to produce something that was acknowledged at the level that it was, like, it was just very gratifying. And I told myself, this is just the beginning. Like, I know this is the beginning of something bigger. And yeah, it's just moving forward from that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I recently went to a convention and I met up with an old buddy. It's somebody that I've interviewed 2 or 3 times, I think. His name is Carlos Ferro, and he's a voice actor, famous for Gears of Gears of War, Gears of War. I'm sorry, I don't want to get in trouble. So he's like, hey D, what's up? I'm like, hey Carlos, how you been? He goes, hey, I want to tell you something. I'm like, what's up? He goes, when I met you 3 years ago, you were so hell-bent on growing your brand and growing your channel. He goes, and I look at you now and you're getting these guests and you're so consistent and you're just kicking ass, man. I was like, damn, man, that was so cool of you to say. He didn't have to, like, totally didn't have to. He could have just said, what's up? Good to see you.
Right.
It was just some type of validation. And I'm not the type to need a pat on the back, but it's just cool to see, you know, how your hard work has paid off.
Yes,
you know?
The acknowledgement.
Definitely. Miss April, it's been so cool to talk to you and catch up with you. I wish you the very, very best. You always got support in me. And so it's going to be this Friday, guys, November 5th at the Bird Ogden Arena, the RGV Vipers home season opener. Tickets are available, season tickets. And we got Fang out there, DJ Villa on the speakers. And it's just such a good time. It's a good time for the family or just a nice little date night. So April, where can they find you on social media?
So I'm on IG. That's at heels.on.hardwood. It's really long, but just type in heels dots and I'll pop up. Same thing on Twitter. Same thing on, no, that's it. Oh, wait, YouTube. Same thing on YouTube.
And you also host Vipers 360, is that correct?
So I also host Vipers 360 and I also do the sideline reporting. So if you catch me at a game doing sideline reporting, wave hi to me, stop me, I'll be there.
Let's get a petition going to get Miss April Aguilar as a sideline reporter for the NBA. I know it's going to happen one day. I know it will.
Yes, me too. My time is coming.
It will. Well, this is D. You can find me at DNC Digital on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Everybody, gentlemen, if you've grown a beard or a mustache in the pandemic, even ladies, if you have a little bit extra on the chin, make sure you check out canyouhandlebar.com. Use my promo code DNC Digital for 15% off. Everybody, take care of yourselves, wear your masks, and have a good night.